I'm now in the peak phase of my training for the Haworth Hobble, and one of the tools I'm using during that training phase is back-to-back long runs. Utilising back-to-back long runs can be a really useful tool in a number of different scenarios. So as I discussed in a previous video, I don't make my long runs more than about 30% of my overall weekly mileage. This is because in the past, when I was trying to push my long run distance up, a lot in comparison to my weekly mileage, I was picking up a lot of like pre-injury sensations and getting a lot more niggles. So once I started making sure my long run distance was just either 30% or under of my overall mileage, things got a lot better. I don't pick up as many niggles and I'm not like feeling as many pre-injury sensations. However, when you're training for really long stuff, obviously this means that your overall long run length might not get that long in comparison to the distance that you're training for. Back-to-back long runs are a way of solving this problem. Firstly, if you're doing 2 long runs, it means you can cover the distance that or closer to the distance that you're aiming for that longer event. But you can do so without putting your body under risk of just overuse and overstrain, or at least reducing that risk significantly. The other thing is, I'm not fast enough to complete the kind of distance that would bring me close to that like practice race effort in under 3 hours. If you're doing your long runs and they're taking over 3 hours, the training stimulus will start to diminish quite significantly past that 3-hour point. So naturally, it is better to try and keep your long runs to that kind of 3-hour maximum where possible. So if you're in a situation where your body just isn't really prepared to be doing long runs that are like really long, and you're not fast enough to cover that kind of those larger distances in the 3-hour mark, then doing it over 2 days means you can get 6 hours of running in, but they're split up. So it's less strain on your body overall. Your body has a little bit of time to recover between the 2 efforts, but you are still practicing running on fatigued and tired legs. Remember, I'm still in the middle of training, so my overall mileage each week is getting fairly high, and I don't want to be doing like enormous efforts each week because my body's just going to get too beaten up. I'm not going to get the training benefits out of that training that I want or need. While I will be doing a long practice long run that will be around the 4-hour mark, I'm doing one of them. I'm not doing any more than that because it's just too much to be doing on a regular basis. My body's not ready to kind of take on that sort of stimulus on the regular. And if I'm doing 4-hour long runs on a regular basis, I'm just not going to get an efficient level of training benefit from it, so there's no point. I will say, if you're not training for anything specific and you want to go out for a 4 or 5 hour long run, like up in the Lake District or whatever, then that's fine. Like, it's perfectly all right to want to go on a big day out adventure. I have done that in the past, but as I am training for a specific event, and I would like to get a reasonable time at that event, weather permitting, it just makes more sense to be sensible about what I'm doing with my long runs. So my first back-to-back long run outing was a little bit of a mixed bag. I headed out into the Peak District on a Friday. I ran from Hathersage over to Eyam, and then I headed further south towards Hassop, and then I came back up along the river. Now that got me a bit over 500 meters of elevation gain. Most of that was in the first half of the run, so that bit was relatively slow, and I had hoped that I could pick up the pace a bit in the second half because it was just along the river and relatively flat. Unfortunately, the weather had been pretty bad in the days leading up to it, so the ground underfoot along the river was just terrible, and I couldn't really pick up a consistent pace. It was pretty frustrating, so I ended up doing that 24k run in 3 hours and 10 minutes in the end, which I was pretty annoyed about. Just because I was constantly finding myself in that second half of the run, just my feet were just slipping and dragging, and I couldn't run consistently, and it was unpleasant, unfortunately. But it is what it is. Got it done, and I was only 10 minutes over the time that I wanted to do it in. My second run on the Saturday morning, due to time constraints, I did that locally. So I ran up into Warncliffe Woods because I live in the north of Sheffield, and I can get like a good 20+K effort in if I use Warncliffe Woods. That went better. There was still a few points where the ground was not good underfoot, and I had to like slow right down or just sort of try and pick my way through some like muddy, slippery slop. Really unpleasant, but there wasn't as much of it, so I was able to get a good pace up along various sections, and I did push the pace in the second half of that run, which I was really pleased with, because running on tired legs, I'd had a pretty shit run the day before, if we're being honest, and then to be able to pick up the pace in the second half of the second long run felt good. That was a bit of a confidence boost, to be honest. I will be doing one more set of back-to-back long runs during my peak phase, and then at the end of the peak phase of training I will be doing that really long effort. I'm going to do the Hope Valley round and use that as my like practice all my nutrition that I want to use on race day, and just try and do the Hope Valley round in around 4 hours. That will be the goal. And despite Friday's run not going particularly well, it was, yeah, big confidence boost to be able to rally back from that on the Saturday and still have a pretty solid run. I did complete that 24K on Saturday in just under 3 hours, so that was target hit. Feeling pretty good about how training's going. I am increasing my mileage. I'm going to try and peak at 100 kilometers for my peak week, the week that I'm doing the Hope Valley round, and then I'll start to taper. So I'm going to see how that feels at the minute. It's all feeling okay. Alright, that was just a little video to go over back-to-back long runs and how I'm using them and how you could potentially use them if you're in a similar situation to me where you're like not particularly fast runner but you want to run really long distances and you need to like get that mileage in somehow without just overloading your body. Back-to-back long runs are a good way of doing it. I wouldn't suggest doing them that often so I'm doing 2 sets of them during this training block, and that's it. It's just to try and help me like finalize that aerobic endurance in this stage of the training block. So yeah, not something I would suggest using all the time. It's more a case of using it to kind of boost that final stage of your training and preparation if you're preparing for something really long. But yeah, hopefully there's a few tips in here that you can make use of, and I will catch you in the next one.